and welcome to Cubits Education. In this lesson we are just going to go over some 1-mark GCSE revision questions. So really common questions for your GCSE exams that are all just 1 mark. So if you can kind of smash this first section of the paper and then do your best to gain as many marks as you can throughout the rest of the paper, you stand a really good chance of doing quite well. And also your 1-mark questions are those that you should be getting really quickly, really easily. Get them down straight away, all right? So you really need to understand the difference between these simple 1-mark questions and then your more functional or problem-solving style questions, okay? So we'll go through that in a later video, but today we're going to just look at these 1-mark questions. Also in a later video, I'm going to look at some 2-mark questions, then 3 and 4-mark questions, and some 5-mark questions, okay? So you've got lots of videos coming up there. Okay, so first of all, we have this first question. So if you want to have a go at this, then obviously pause the video and have a go, and then press play and I'll go through the answer. All right, so let's start off then. It says to write the following numbers in order of size. Start with the smallest number. So here we have a selection of numbers, and obviously if you know the answer to this one and you're absolutely certain and you want to skip on to the next one, that's fine, just fast forward. But I am going to explain the reasoning behind why these numbers are in the order that they are. Now, although we have some digits here that are like, so you've got 0.32, okay, and we could think of that in terms of money, and we could say that's like 32 pence, okay. Now, this next one, 0.4, we would say that that's 40 pence because 0.4 is equivalent to 40%, all right, so it wouldn't be 4 pence. It would be 40 pence. If it was 4 pence, it would be 0.04, okay? And then this one, we could say it's 35 pence. And then this one is a little bit different because there's 3 digits after the decimal, and it's 0.309. So I like to think of that as either 30 pence, okay, or it's even closer to 31 pence, okay? So it's like 30.9 pence. If I was to turn that into a percentage, 0.309, I would times that by 100 to turn it into a percentage, and it would give me 30.9. So it's up to you if you want to write them in terms of pence or if you want to write them in terms of a percentage. This one would be 32%, this one would be 40%, and all you would do is times them all by 100 to put them into their percentages. And when we times by 100, remember, we're just moving our decimal point 2 places to the right, okay? So like this one, we just move it and it gives us 35%. And then here we move it 1, 2, and it ends up at 30.9%, okay? So now we know the percentages, we can put them in order. So the smallest percentage that we have there is actually this one, 30.9. It's the smallest number. 30 is the smallest number. So 30.9 will be the smallest there. So I'm not going to actually write 30.9, sorry. I'm going to actually write it as our original number, 0.309, okay? Then the next one, so after 30 or 30.9, we've got 32%, so that would be 0.32. We've then got this 35% here, so that's 0.35. And then next we've got this 40%, so 0.4. Okay, and now that you've done that, you've got your mark. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. And for this one, we have a multiple question. So it says here to list, it says here is a list of numbers 5, 11, 18, 22 and 29. And from the list, write down a multiple of 3. So again, if you want to have a go, and in fact what I'll do is I'll move up just a little bit more so you can see those 2 questions there, or even the next one if you want. So you can have a go at those. Pause the video and then we'll go through it. Okay, so write down the multiples of 3. Now the multiples of 3 are the 3 times table. So we need to remember the difference between factors and multiples. Okay. The multiples are basically the times tables, the multiplication tables, okay? The factors of a number, so if I said multiples of 3, it's the 3 times table. Factors of a number are numbers that go inside another number. So what can that number be divided by? For example, factors of 20 would be 5, 10, 1 and 20 and 4 because they all fit into 20. Okay, 20 can be divided by all of those numbers exactly. No decimals, no remainders, okay? In this case, it's saying write down the multiples of 3. So to help you, if you forget, or if you're not sure or you can't see straight away what's in the 3 times table, we're going to write out the 3 times table. Okay, so we've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27 and 30. Now, in this case, you've just got to look at your list of multiples and see which ones match the numbers in the list. And as we can see, 18 is in both of those. So that would be your answer to that question. Okay. The next one, which I'm hoping you've already done, says to write 4.666 correct to the nearest whole number. So when we're looking at whole numbers, we're trying to say, is 4.666 closer to 4 or 5? Okay. Now, halfway between 4 and 5 is 4.5. Okay. That's halfway between. So this is higher than 4.5, so we know it's closer to 5. And so that's the closest whole number, so the answer is just 5. All right. Okay, so not too difficult so far. Nice, easy 1-mark questions. So let's look at the next one. The next couple we have are write down 3/4 as a decimal and write down the value of 7 in the number 8,765. Now, when you write 3/4 as a decimal, it's a non-calculator paper, you're just going to have to remember those. Now, there's a certain amount of fractions that you just need to memorise, and hopefully you do know most of them. So the ones that you need to know are a half, a third, a quarter, a fifth, 3/4, maybe an eighth, okay? And then a tenth, and, you know, all the other ones related to that, so 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and so on. Okay, so I know we're looking at 3/4 in this question, but it's always good to have a little bit of extra knowledge. So we need to remember that a half is 50% or 0.5. And if you don't know these, please write them down and learn them. A third is 33.3% or 0.33, and that recurs over and over and over again. So we put one of those little dots above it, okay? A quarter is 25% or 0.25. A fifth is 20% or 0.2. We'll come back to 3/4 in a minute. An eighth is let me do the percentage first, is 12.5% or 0.125. And a tenth, nice and easy, 10% or 0.1. Okay, so what we need to do here is, if we know that 1/4 is 25%, then 3/4 is 3 lots of that. So that would be 75% or 0.75. So that would be our answer, 0.75 in this case, because it wants it as a decimal. Okay. So if we break something into quarters, one of those quarters would be worth 25%, and 3 of them would be 3 lots of 25, which is 75. Okay. The next question asks us to write down the value of the 7 in this number here. And if you read it aloud, 8,765, it's in the number, okay? It's in the words. 8,765. Now, if you struggle with things like this, it's always nice to go back to the beginning of number, because number can be really interesting if you actually try to enjoy it. And really understand what your units, your tens, your hundreds and your thousands and so on are. Okay, in this case we have thousands, hundreds, tens and units. We have 8,000, 700s, 6 tens and 5 units. Okay, so 7 is in your hundreds column. Alright, but I'm sure you know that, otherwise you wouldn't necessarily be doing GCSE. So if you struggled with that, maybe go back to some basics and try and really understand the number. There's some fantastic books out there that you could read, or YouTube is full of stuff like this. All right. Okay, let's move on. So we've got 2 or 3 questions here that you could probably get to. I'm sorry if it's a bit blurry on the question, it's because I'm zoomed in. So the first question you are looking at, it says to write 180 minutes in hours. The next one says to write 0.73 as a percentage. And the third one wants you to work out 10 times and then 3 plus 5 in brackets. So if you want to have a go at those 3, pause the video, have a go and come back. Okay, hopefully you've done that. Now, for question 1 on this page, write 180 minutes in hours. Now, you really must remember that there are 60 minutes in an hour. Again, I'm sure you already know that and you're telling me to move on. So if you think you know all of these questions and you're happy with them, move on to the next ones. There's always something to learn because I do add bits in. So 60 minutes in an hour. So let's write this down, but let's write some 60 times tables, okay? Or even just the 6 times tables. So first of all, we've got 60 minutes. That's 1 hour. Well, 2 6s are 12, so 2 hours must be 120 minutes. And 3 6s are 18. Okay, so that must be 3 hours is 180 minutes. All right. So if you don't want to count up in 60s, count up in 6s and add the 0. Okay. So I know that it's exactly 3 hours. Okay, 0.73 as a percentage. Well, earlier on, in the first question, I think it was, I did tell you that to turn any number into a percentage, you times by 100. And I don't mean use a calculator. I mean just move your decimal point 2 places to the right, because there's 2 zeros in 100, so we move it 2 places. If we move it 2 places, it gives you 70, oh, not pounds, it gives you 73%. Nice and easy those ones, because you're literally just getting rid of that 0 point and adding a percentage on the end. Okay, and then the last one, work out 10 times 3 plus 5. Now, for these, you need to make sure that you are really understanding BIDMAS. Obviously, this is a nice one, but when you get to more confusing ones or ones that have got a lot more going on, you need to take your time and write down BIDMAS. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear that and I'm going to bring this down so I've got a bit more space to write. And I'm going to write down BIDMAS over here so you can remember it. And if you don't remember BIDMAS, now is a good time to learn. So BIDMAS stands for brackets. B stands for brackets. I stands for indices. I'll tell you what they are in a second. D stands for divide. M stands for multiply or multiplication. A stands for add or addition. And S stands for subtract or subtraction. Okay? So that means that the first thing that you have to do, you have to do it in order. So this is like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and step 6. Step 1 would be to work out anything in brackets. So our question, I'll write it out again just here, has got brackets in it. If it didn't have brackets in it, you'd just ignore that part and move on to the next part. Okay. So, now indices, there are no indices in this question. Just wanted to explain that a little bit. Indices are anything that might be squared, so a little 2, or anything that might be, it could be cubed, so you can have cubed, you can have something to the power of 4, you can have something to the power of 7, okay? That's indices, they're all indices. Another indices would also be a square root, or even a cube root, okay? So, if you're not sure on indices and what they are and how they work, there is a video on my channel for that. So go back and watch that, and then you'll be able to work out indices when you get to questions like this. Okay, so they are indices. I'm just going to rub them out because I need the space. All right, so we're going to do the brackets first. Okay, and in this question, the bracket says 3 plus 5. So 3 plus 5 is 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross that out, and underneath I'm going to put 8. And then I'm just going to write in whatever I've still got. And now all I'm left with is 10 times 8. I've got no indices, so I don't have to worry about that. I've got no division, so I don't have to worry about that. But I do have multiply, 10 times 8. So 10 times 8 is 80. So my answer is 80. I've done the multiplication. There is no addition and no subtraction in this case. All right. So your final answer is 80. And obviously there are more difficult questions than this, and they are in that indices video. So if you want to go and watch that, then please do. All right. So the next question then says to write down a prime number that is between 20 and 30. So if you want to pause the video and have a go at that one, go right ahead, and then you can press play for the answer. So if you've had a go at that one then, let's have a think about prime numbers. Now people get really confused with prime numbers, they get really annoyed with them, they don't know what they are, and we're always told that it's only got 2 factors, which is itself and 1, or it can only be divided by itself and 1. But as much as that is true, it's easier just to explain it like, think of a number and it can't be divided by anything. So if you think about the number 11, what can fit into the number 11? What can we divide 11 by that gives us a number without any decimals in it, a whole number? Okay, or 5, for example. 5 is a really good one because it's small. You can think about it. 5 divided by what? Well, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, so that's got a decimal. We don't want that. 5 divided by 3, 0.666. Okay, recurring, so no, we don't want that one either. Alright, so basically we can't divide 5 by anything. I mean, we could do 5 divided by 4, that gives us 1.25. Again, we don't want that, it's a decimal. So if we did 5 divided by 5, that gives us 1, and if we did 5 divided by 1, it would give us 5. So 5 is a prime because 5 can't be divided by any other numbers unless it gives you a decimal, and we don't want that. Okay, so that's what a prime number is. So what we need to do is figure out the prime numbers between 20 and 30 in this question, okay, and write them down. So we've got between 20 and 30, and what I'd like you to do is try to remember quite a few of the prime numbers. So first of all, let's write down the primes up to 20. Okay, and I'd like you to learn these. Okay, 1 is not a prime, so let's just ignore that one right now. 1 is not a prime number. I understand that it can't be divided by anything else other than 1 and itself, which is 1. But technically it's only got 1 factor, which is 1, so we don't include it in the primes. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17 and 19. Those are the primes up to 20. Okay. So then let's think about the numbers from 20 to 30. I'm just going to write them all down. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 and 30. Now I know 20 is not a prime because 2 goes into it. I can divide it by 2. Okay. I can divide it by 10. I can divide it by 5. I also know that 21 is not a prime because it can be divided by 7, it can be divided by 3, and obviously 1 and 21, so we can't use that one. 22 can be divided by 2, alright. 23, think, what can 23 be divided by? Okay, 23 cannot be divided by anything other than 1 and 23, so that is a prime. 24 is even, and it can be divided by 2 and 6 and 4 and 8. Okay, so we can't use that. 25, well that can be divided by 5 straight away, so that's not a prime. 26 again is an even number and can be divided by many things. Okay, well, it could be divided by 2. So that's not a prime. 27 can actually be divided by 9. 3 9s are 27, so that's not a prime. 28 can be divided by 2, and 29, that is a prime. We can't divide by anything. And 30 can be divided by 3 and 10 and 2 and 15, so that's not a prime. So 23 and 29 are your only two choices. Now, everybody seems to write down both numbers when they do this question, but it does say you only have to write down one prime number, so it's up to you. Just write down one of them. All right, so another thing to mention is that 2 is the only even prime. All right, so any other even number, such as 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, and so on, they can't be primes. 2 is the only even prime number. All right. Okay, so let's move on to a few more questions. So here we've got three. So pause the video and have a go at these, and then I will go through them. Okay, so we have write 0.37 as a fraction. Now, again, before we write it as a fraction, let's do 0.37 times 100. Okay, which is, we move the decimal point 2 places, 37%. Now, percent actually means out of 100. So what I would do is I would write 37 out of 100 like this. That's my fraction. And then what we would do is we would cancel it down. But actually we can't cancel it down because nothing actually goes into 37. Now, if you're not sure about cancelling down, go and watch my other video on fractions. There's quite a few of those so that you can understand how to cancel down fractions to their simplest form if you don't already. So our final answer is actually just 37 over 100. Okay. The next question says, write down 29,381 correct to the nearest thousand. Now, earlier on, I talked about understanding your hundreds, tens, and units, and so on. So I'm going to write this out. So I've got 29,381. So I've got a unit, tens, hundreds, thousands, and then tens of thousands, which isn't necessarily written like that, but that's what I'm going to do, tens of thousands. So you've got 1 unit, 8 tens, 3 hundreds, 9 thousands, and 2 tens of thousands. So if I'm going to round to the nearest thousand, it's this column here, this thousands column, that I need to look at. Okay, so that's 29,000. So if it's 29,000, I need to know, is it closer to 29,000 or 30,000? Because they're the two whole thousands that we're trying to find out whether it's closer to either of those. So 29,381, okay, now we could decide by writing that there in the middle, is it closer to 29,000 or is it closer to 30,000? Now I know it's closer to 29,000 because this 381 isn't quite halfway. 29,500 would be right in the middle of those, okay, whereas 29,381 isn't quite halfway. So if it was 29,500 or above, it would be closer to this, but if it's 29,499 or below, it's closer to 29,000, okay. Again, if you're struggling with those and rounding to the nearest 10, 100 and 1,000, there is a separate video on that too. So 29,000 is your final answer. Okay, the last one on this section before I scroll down is simplify 3e minus e plus 4e. Now this one's nice. It's nice. If you fancy having a go at this one as well, now that I've scrolled up, please do. Okay, so simplify this for me. All we've got to do here is collect the e's. So let's say we've got we've got 3e, take away an e, and plus 4 of them, plus 4e. So let's say I do 3e, take away e first. That gives me 2e. You've got 3 eggs, for example, and you're taking another egg away. That gives us 2 eggs. And then we're just going to add the 4 eggs back on from the end, and altogether that gives us 6 eggs, 6e. Okay? And then the last one on this page, write a quarter as a percentage. Now you should know this, okay? And if you haven't remembered it from earlier, I'm going to tell you now and you need to remember it. A quarter is 25%, okay? It wants a percentage here, but if it was a decimal, if it wanted a decimal, it would be 0.25. If you can't remember, a percentage is out of 100. So what I could do is take 100 and divide it by 4 because it wants a quarter, and that's 25. So I know it's 25%. Okay? All right. Okay, moving on. Let's do these three. You can pause the video and have a go at these if you like, and then press play for the answers. I'm going to start going a bit quicker now because we have gone through, quite a few bits and pieces. And obviously, if there is anything that you still need to revise and you're not 100% sure on these, you can go back and watch the other videos. All right, change 300 centimetres into metres. 300 centimetres into metres. We need to know that there are 100 centimetres in 1 metre, and you've got 300 centimetres. Okay, so that makes sense, doesn't it? 100 centimetres is a metre, so 200 centimetres must be 2 metres. So 300 centimetres must be 3 metres. So that's our answer, 3 metres. Sorry, we could have just put 3 because the metres is already there. Okay? Next question, fractions of amounts. A third of 24. A third of 24. All that means is we need to split 24 into 3 pieces. When we split something into 3 pieces, we're just dividing it. How many 3's go into 24? So if you're not sure, go up in your 3 times table until you get to 24, and it will give you 8. Okay. And the next question will give us some good practice at simplifying a fraction, because 40% as a fraction, remember, if you don't know, you can put 40 over 100 because 40% means 40 out of 100, and then we can simplify our fraction. Now when we simplify a fraction, what you've got to do is think about what number goes into the top of the fraction and the bottom. So 40 and 100 are both even numbers, so you could divide by 2. But instead of doing that, what I'm going to do, because it's quicker, is they both end in 0. And if they both end in 0, it means I can divide by 10. So I'm going to divide 40 by 10, and I'm going to divide 100 by 10. 40 divided by 10, we just take off the 0, it gives us 4. And 100 divided by 10, take off the 0, it gives us 10. And then finally you're left with 4 over 10, and now you can think what goes into both 4 and 10, what can I divide them both by? And I can divide them both by 2, they are both even numbers, so I'm going to divide them both by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So your actual final answer is 2/5. Okay, not too bad, hey? Alright. Let's move on. Let's do a few more. I'm sure you're getting bored of 1 mark questions. Let's do these last 2. Okay, and the first one is an indices question, and then the next one is writing down some negative numbers in order of size. Okay, so we will, if you press pause, have a go, and then press play for the answer. Okay, so this next question, work out 2.5 squared. Now, if you haven't watched the indices video or you think you know what to do, that's great. But again, if you don't know what to do, you should really go back and watch that because it is really helpful in terms of things like this. But when we have this little 2, it doesn't mean we're timesing it by 2. It means we're doing it twice. So 2.5 times 2.5, we're timesing it by the same number. Okay, to the power of 2. So we're just going to write it down twice. So if you're not sure how to do this without a calculator, what you could do is do it like 25 times 25. So we could do 25 times 25, like this. And then we can add in the decimals in the end. Okay, so if we're doing 25 times 25, sorry, we're going to add in the zeros. We're going to separate it out between tens and units. So the first thing we're going to do is 20 times 20. Okay, so 2 times 2, which is this bit and this bit, is 4. And then we've got a 0 there and a 0 there. So we just add in 2 zeros. And then we're going to do 20 times 5. So 2, which is here, times 5 is 10. And then don't forget we've got this 0, so we need to add that on. All right. Next, we're going to do, again, if I swap my colour, 20 times 5 again. Okay, well that's the same, so we can put in 100 there. And then we're going to do 5 times 5. 5 times 5, you should know, is 25. So we end up with 400 plus 100 plus 100 plus 25. So if we want to write that out, we can put it like this. 400, 100, 100 and 25. Okay, I'm just trying to show you a way of doing it without a calculator because it is a non-calculator paper. All right, and if you could use any other multiplication method that you know as well, by the way. I'm just showing you an easy one that most people use. And then we're just going to add these together. So this column just has a 5, the rest are zeros. This column just has a 2, the rest are zeros. And this column has 4, 5, 6. So our answer is 625 for that. So I'm just going to write 625 there. But obviously we're not doing 25 times 25. We're doing 2.5 times 2.5. So if we look, I have a decimal space there and decimal space there. Okay, towards the end of the number. So between the decimal point and the end of the number is one decimal place and another one there as well. So that's 2 decimal places that I'm out. So I need to go to my large number and I go from the end, okay, and I'm going to go back 2 decimal places and it would be 6.25 as my answer. Okay, so your final answer should be 6.25. Okay then, on the next question, it wants you to write the following numbers in order of size, starting with the smallest. Now, when you're doing negative numbers, again, there is a video on that if you want to go back and refresh yourself. The larger the negative number, the smaller it is. Or if you like to think of it in terms of temperature instead, the larger the negative number, the colder it is. So if the negative number is like this one, -6, that is colder than -3. Okay, which means it's smaller than -3. All right. So when you're doing your negative numbers, find the largest negative first, which is -6, and write that one down. The next largest negative is -4, and then -3. Okay, so we've done all the negatives. Easy. Then now we're just going to get larger and larger until we get to the largest whole number that we have, the largest positive number. So next we have 0. 0 is going to be, so she writes 1. 0 is going to be our next biggest number. Then we have 1. Then we have 2. And then we have 7. Okay? So as you can see, it goes from very, very cold to 7's not that hot, but to warmer. Okay? So obviously from here, we're just going in the normal direction of numbers. Okay? And as we go from here to here, we are getting smaller with our numbers before we get to 0, and then we get higher. All right? So the higher the the larger the negative number, the colder it is. So that's our smallest number. Okay, I hope that made sense. All right. Okay, just a few more. I know I keep saying this, but we are getting to a point now where it's just repetitive. So let's do a few more, make sure there's nothing we've missed, and then if you like, I can attach the document and you can have a go at the rest of the questions. So this one says to write the following numbers in order of size, starting with the smallest, so you can have a go at that one. We've already discussed something like that. And then the next one says to write 0.6 as a percentage. Again, already discussed something like that. So have a go, pause the video and press play for the answers. Okay, so these two questions are quite nice because they could be quite similar. So what I'm going to suggest we do here is turn all of these into percentages. Remember, to turn them into percentages, we're just going to multiply them all by 100. So if I multiply 0.4 by 100, it gives me 40, because I moved my decimal point 2 spaces, and any empty space would be a 0. Okay, so if it's 0.4 times it by 100, it makes 40. 0.02, we go 2 places, it just ends up there, so that just leaves us with 2. 0.37, it just ends up there, so that ends up with 37. I'm sorry, these are all percentages. 0.152 once, twice, ends up there, so that's 15.2%. And then this one, 2 spaces, ends up there, so it ends up being 20%. Okay, so if we're going from the smallest number, we need to find the smallest percentage in that list. And our smallest percentage is 2. So our first number would be 0.02. Because remember, we need to write the original number, not the percentage that we've written down to help us. Okay, the next one, the next largest is 15.2. So that would be 0.152. Then we've got 20, so that's 0.2. Then we've got 37, so 0.37. And finally, 40%, which is 0.4. And there you go. As easy as that, and I know it's only 1 mark, but the more you do it, the quicker you'll get at that. Now, we've just done that about 5 times, and it's going to be exactly the same for question 2. When you change something into a percentage, we're just going to times it by 100. So we're going to do 0.6 times 100, which means we're just going to move our, if I write 0.6 down here, decimal place twice, it's got an empty space, so a 0 would go there. So it would actually be 60, so 60%. Okay? Right, we're almost repeating ourselves too many times, so let's see what we've got next. Okay, so we haven't done a factor question, so I'm going to do questions 3 and 4 on this page, because what I've done is taken a load of 1 mark questions from different papers. And then I'm going to finish the video there and let you have a go at the rest of the questions that I've put together. So this question, so if you'd like to have a go at these, obviously again, pause the video, have a go, and then press play for the answers. So let's do that. Alright, so here is a list of numbers, 3, 5, 7, 12, 15, 18, and 20. From the list, write down a factor of 10. Okay, so remember, multiples were the multiplication tables, factors are what go into a number. So the factors of 10. So let's write down the factors of 10. Factors of 10. So 10 can be divided by, now let me explain a really good way of writing out a list of factors. So a really good way of writing out factors is to start from 1 and think, does 1 go into 10? Yes, 1 goes into 10 times. So I'm going to write 10 there because 10 is our last number. We're not going to have any more numbers because we only want to know what goes into 10. So we have 1. Does 2 go into 10? Yes, 2 times 5 is 10. Does 3 go into 10? No. Nothing times by 3 makes 10. Does 4 go into 10? No, nothing times by 4 makes 10. Does 5 go into 10? Yes, we've already found it. 5 times 2 makes 10. So we've actually got our entire list. I obviously left that way too long. Made this gap way too large because there are only 4 factors of 10. So our factors of 10 are 1, 2, 5 and 10. I'm just going to move out those bits there. Okay, so now we have our list. What numbers match this list as well as this list above here? Okay, and as we can see, we've got 5. I think that's all that there is in there, yeah. So we just write down 5. And then the final question, write down 7,829 to the nearest 1,000. So, just going to write this out again, 7,829. We've got 9 units, 2 tens, 8 hundreds, and 7 thousands. Okay, so 7,829 to the nearest 1,000. So if I've got 7,000, I need to know if it's going to be closer to 7,000 or 8,000. So right in between those two numbers is 7,500, and the number we have here in front of us is 7,829, which we could possibly say is round about there. So we know it's closer to 8,000, so our answer would be 8,000. Again, if this number here, this 8 part, is 5 or above, we always round it up to the highest, the next highest, okay? Because we're trying to decide whether it's between 7,000 or 8,000. So it's the number next to that 7 that we need to look at, all right? And if you're not sure on that, please watch my video on rounding. You'll find it really helpful. Okay, well, thank you for watching. And what I'm going to do is add the document in here so that you can have a go at the rest of the questions and do some revision. And then I can put the answers up as well in maybe about a week or so, just to give you some time to have a go without actually, cheating. Not cheating, but, just to give yourself some time to think about it without looking at the answers too soon, okay? Alright, well done. I hope you found that video really useful, and I really look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos on revision.